Everybody, let's call the meeting to order. And for the pledge, please. To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Good. Do we have any comments from the public today? Seeing none, let's move on. Any corrections to the agenda or consent calendar? Oh, no? No? Okay, do we have a motion to adopt consent? Or would anybody like to pull anything from consent?
I'll make a motion. Second.
Moved and seconded. I guess before we go to that, let's see if there's any public comment on the consent calendar. Seeing none, let's call it. Okay, let's go to item 6A.
You'll need to recuse yourself someday.
Do I need to leave for recusal?
Yeah.
I will recuse for the next two items. Shane, you got that?
I'll make it quick. All right, good afternoon. So I do have two items for you this afternoon. And the first item is seeking approval of adoption of two side letters to the union MOU. So as you know, we entered into contract negotiations with the Local 39 union earlier this year, as we have the contract expiring in June. We recently finished up those negotiations, and we did come to an agreement on a successor MOU. But two of the items we agreed upon in negotiations actually affect the current contract. So therefore, we need side letters adopted to make them effective. So the two items in the side letter are the adoption of Juneteenth as a paid holiday, and the second item is a retroactive cost of living adjustment going back to June of 2023. Any questions?
I think we've been well abreast of everything going on, so yeah, no questions, and yeah, thanks for moving it forward.
Yeah, and I just wanted to add real quick too. I did mention we did come to an agreement on a successor MOU, but we're still finishing the red line language in that MOU, so I expect it to come probably the first board meeting in May. So I will request a board action is to approve side letters between the district and Stationary Engineers Local 39 dated April 4th, 2024. Okay, so the next item I have for you is really the same story, just a different title. So the same thing happened with the management group. We met with those representatives, and we came to an agreement on a successor MOU for that group as well. But as I stated in the previous item, there are two side letters that also need to be added to their MOU in order to be effective. And those are the same items, adding Juneteenth to the list of paid holidays, and then a cost of living adjustment retroactive back to June of 2023. Any questions? Oh, sorry. Hold on here. Okay. Requested board action is to approve side letters between the district and management staff of South Tahoe Public Utility District dated April 4th, 2024. Thank you. Oh. Thank you.
Takes us to item 6C. Got that one, Megan Colby.
Good afternoon. I'm here to request award for the 2024 tank coating touch-up project. This project falls under our tank asset management program. There's 3 tanks that we're going to be taking care of this year: Gardner Mountain 2, Christmas Valley, and Cold Creek. We're not doing any full recoatings this year because we have state line tanks, which are pretty big tanks, scheduled for next year. So these are just tank touch-ups, but they will be both interior and exterior work. We advertised in February, and on March 19th, we opened the bids. We had 4 bids received, and they ranged from $327,800 to $677,737. My estimate was about $389,200 to do the work of the 3 tanks. So Heidi did a bid review. There were only minor irregularities with all the bids, and so we'd like to award to the lowest responsible bidder. Any questions? I was good with my numbers this time. I actually did call up with them, had a call with them because I was a little concerned that their bid was so low, especially seeing the spread. They're confident that they can meet all the requirements of the contract, and so I feel much better now. But yes, they did put it all out there though to try and win this project. But, yeah.
Any other board member questions? Do we have any public questions on this item? Seeing none, what's the requested action?
Sure, 2 parts. So the first one, find minor irregularities in the bid from Olympus and Associates Incorporated to be immaterial and waive immaterial irregularities. And 2, award the 2024 tank coating touch-ups project, the lowest responsible bidder, Olympus and Associates, in the amount of $327,800. We do, they were a subcontractor on our project a couple of years ago. It was an okay job. From my understanding, I was not here. There was some communication breakdown, I think, between the subcontractor and us. I did also reach out to several of the references that they had listed. So I talked to Mike West at Sonoma County Water, and then a gentleman, and I am totally blanking on his name right now, down in San Luis Obispo, and they had nothing but great things to say about the contractor, easy to work with, you know, minor change orders, never having any issues with public complaints or anything, because they do tank coating work for their primary line of work. And then I did also talk to our third-party inspector that we use for tank coating projects, and he has a long history working with them. They've had some change in ownership at the company, so 2 of the employees are taking it over, and so I did talk through that with them, and I think that's for the better as we move forward. So I feel confident. I feel good about awarding it to them.
And they're located,
no, they're actually out of Reno. Yeah, Reno. Yeah.
We have a motion on this side.
I'll make a motion.
I'll second that.
Moved and seconded. Any other discussion? Thank you, Megan.
Thank you.
Okay, let's go to item 6D. This is Andrea.
Good afternoon, President Peterson and Directors of the Board. District staff will be working.
Andrea, can you pull it a little closer, please?
District staff will be working with
You come up here.
Try one more time.
Good afternoon, President Peterson and directors of the board. District staff will be working with California Special District Associates Financing Group, Oppenheimer, Bartle Wells, and Jones Hall the first quarter 2025 to obtain tax-exempt financing for all or a portion of the following projects: Tahoe Keys cured-in-place pipe, Herbert walk-up replacement, Baldwin Beach gravity rehabilitation replacement, Montgomery Estates easement CIPP Phase 1, wastewater treatment plant ballast pond, blower system improvements, plant electrical upgrades, filters 3 and 4 rehabilitation, bio building odor control and HVAC upgrades, and Pope Beach pump station. The intent is to obtain this via a sewer revenue bond or certificate of participation. Are there any questions?
Board members, questions? Are there any public questions or comments? Seeing none, what is your requested action?
It is requested the board approve resolution number 327124, intention to reimburse expenditures from the proceeds of tax-exempt financing.
I'll second.
Moved and seconded. Any other discussion? Thank you, Andrea. All right, let's go to item 7, committee reports. Start with Nick. No. Okay. My only report, Eldorado Water Agency meets Thursday, next Thursday. It's usually on a Wednesday, but for some reason we changed it this time. So Thursday, I'll be here for that. We typically notice those meetings so that that conference room over there is a public space. If public or other interested people want to be there for that meeting, that's completely open. All right. Let's go to board member reports.
Nothing for me.
The only thing I have on the rate increase, public information. There's what's that?
The FAQ.
The FAQs for the public information that goes out with that. There's one item in there, and I just want to put this out there for board member input, but there's an item in there that says that the rate increase is not needed for labor cost increases over the next 5 years. And I don't think that's true. I sit on the finance committee. All of our costs are going up: labor, materials, supplies, the cost of maintenance, and energy. All those costs are going up, as well as the capital program. And all of those things, in my mind, in my decision making, has been a motivation for the rate increase. There is a way to look at it that if we take money away from capital, we can cover those other increasing costs. And so you could say that the rate increase is not needed for salary raises, benefit increases, that sort of thing. But I disagree with that philosophically. I don't want to tell the public that. But it is kind of a technical question. I'd be curious how other board members feel about that issue.
And just before you comment, what the message we were actually trying to send with that, and actually the question was, if I remember correctly, the question in the FAQ was, are any of the revenues from these rate increases going towards salaries and benefits? Is that the right way it was posed? It was something like that, and we said no. And the reason we said that is the message we were trying to send is that if the district actually did not have any capital needs, the current revenue stream would be sufficient to cover us for years down the road without requiring rate increases. So that's actually what we were trying to say with that. Yeah.
How is that possible? Through burning reserves?
No. Just the current rate revenue. It's enough to cover the day-to-day operations, the people, the salaries and benefits, and our debt. It's just not sufficient enough to once you lump in our $260 million in capital projects. Yeah.
Yeah. Basically, if you take from capital, you can fund increases. In
Exactly.
operating costs.
Yeah.
And I don't like that message, because in my view, part of the selling point or part of the reason that you can explain to ratepayers that costs are going up is that costs are going up, including labor costs.
We did actually remove that one item from the FAQ.
Okay. Well, I don't know. If I'm out of line here, board members, let me know.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not prepared to get into that right now, and I don't know if it's agendized properly, but, you know, I think it's something we can take up with maybe a subsequent finance committee meeting in preparation for any board action.
Yeah, I think that Prop 218 notice has gone out.
Yep.
So, yeah.
But if there's clarification or other messaging that we need to do, like we talked about at the last finance committee in terms of public outreach, we could talk about that.
Yeah, let's do it. All right. No other board member reports. Let's go to staff and attorney reports. Looks like Shelley, you're first.
All right, good afternoon. I wanted to provide a quick update on a busy legislative season since we had we were missing some board members last week and had a short board meeting. I wanted to give you an update this time around. So a few weeks ago, I went to DC with a contingent of Team Tahoe. And in addition to focusing on water for fire infrastructure and what the district does, it was really an effort to have a lot of agencies, organizations from Tahoe advocate for the extension of the Lake Tahoe Restoration Act, of which we get funding from. So the crew of Tahoe folks, it was very diverse and large. It consisted of representatives from Placer, Washoe, and Douglas County. The Washoe Tribe was there, Forest Service, League to Save Lake Tahoe, TRPA, the city, the community college, Barton, Tahoe Transportation District, UNR, and the chamber, as well as water districts. So it was a big contingent. And we split into 3 groups and made our round on Capitol Hill, talking to both our delegation as well as other key players. Of importance, we met with all the members of the House Appropriations Committee because that's how we're trying to get LTRA through. We held a press conference with Congressman Kiley, who has co-signed onto extending the Lake Tahoe Restoration Act, which is spectacular, as well as we hosted a happy hour for all of our delegation staffers, which is really great. These are the folks that we call, pick up the phone, and are sending emails to asking, and it's nice to spend personal time with them, getting to know them, thanking them for everything they do for Lake Tahoe, and in particular for the district. I had a meeting with the Forest Service, which I always do when I'm back there, but this time around it was really nice because it wasn't just the water district's meeting with the Forest Service saying, please give us more money. We had Lake Tahoe Basin Management Unit with us, the League, and TRPA, and the Washoe Tribe in that meeting to show that we have a lot of supporters, partners in that water for fire is key for all of us. On the last day of the trip, so we had 2 full days with the Tahoe crew, and then on the last day of the trip it was North Tahoe Public Utility District and myself and our lobbyists, and we were making the rounds with our delegation. So we met with Congressman Kiley and Amadeus staff, as well as Senator Rosen and Cortez Masto's staff. Really, you know, most of those are Nevada representatives. We were intentionally targeting them. The Tahoe Water for Fire Partnership is by state. When we get money, both our California and Nevada representatives lobby really hard for us. So it was really an opportunity to just say thank you. The best part about the trip was that the Friday before I flew out there, Congress passed a spending bill. And in that spending bill, it included $1 million for the Pioneer Trail water line, which is awesome. Of all of the projects in Congressman Kiley's area that were submitted, he selected ours to move forward. We got our 2 senators' support, and it made it all the way through and got federal funding. So that's federal dollars on the ground helping our community with water infrastructure. Really exciting. So we got to say thank you for those projects. There was a call for FY25 earmarked projects as well. So we submitted another project, Park Avenue water line. And I've got meetings with staff set up to follow up and talk a little bit more about that project. So a lot of exciting news. At the end of April, speaking on the federal side, we are helping Congressman Kiley organize a Western Caucus meeting. So the Western Caucus is a group of Republican Congress members who from the West, which is really like Mississippi and over, and they get together annually. And about 5 or 6 years ago, we hosted this group here in the boardroom one day, and then the other day they do field tours. So we're going to host them again on April 24th in our boardroom, and I'm working with Congressman Kiley's staff on some ideas for tours. They want to talk fire and try to get out on the lake and all that jazz. So a great opportunity to get in front of more representatives talking about water infrastructure as well. On the state side of things, we've been working with Senator Alvarado Gil on a new bill, SB 1088, which addresses a funding gap for water infrastructure projects. So a few weeks ago, the California Tahoe Alliance was down in Sacramento, meeting with both Alvarado Gil staff as well as other representatives, really pushing the importance of this bill, which is great, right? Our California Tahoe Alliance includes city, counties, TRPA, the league, other agencies, and it's nice that we can work together and support each other when we have legislation that benefits Tahoe. I'll also be heading down to SAC come May. The California Special Districts Association is doing a lobbying day, and I'm working on getting SB 1088 as a asking point for the whole contingent. So more to come, but it's been a pretty busy and productive legislative session so far. Any questions?
Oh, great news.
It's great news,
Yeah,
right?
it was really exciting news. I held out hope the entire time, but there was always the voice. I was like, oh, there's going to be the day show. It's like, no, that just didn't come through.
Right.
Well, we all listen to national news, let's be honest, so it's not due to our efforts at all. So I was skeptical, to be honest. And so for this to come through, I thought was a really positive sign. Great news, actually. It's a great work, and we be diligent towards that end.
Yeah, keep it up. Just to direct this probably Paul, but I mean, Shelley is a great voice for not only the district, but also the water for fire issue. I mean, that issue has been elevated so well, and even just the last few years, that you're already seeing fruits of that labor. So I just commend the district in really being a leader in that space and joining kind of the whole Tahoe partnership from a legislative perspective. It just helps the district, but it also just helps Tahoe show how coordinated we are. That is the most effective thing we can do with legislators, is to show that we have a broad partnership, everybody's on the same page. So I think that last visit was excellent. It was the largest contingent I think Tahoe's had in DC in probably 30 years, and it will hopefully pay off. So great work. Good job.
Thanks, Shelley. Okay, let's go to 9B. Mark.
Real quick, just before Mark starts his presentation, this is kind of a prelude to the next board meeting when there will be an agenda item to discuss the water rights issue again. So that's kind of what this is in preparation for.
Do you have a PowerPoint?
Yeah. I saw you. Green.
Can you do it on your screen?
There it is. Yeah. Yeah. There we go.
And then you can see the full size, right, not the, you don't have one. All right, good afternoon, Mark Delos, Water Resources Manager. As Paul mentioned, I'm going to talk today about water supply documentation. Here's a brief outline. So first I'm going to go over some of the water supply challenges that we're facing. Next I'll go into the groundwater development process, and then some particular challenges with groundwater in South Lake Tahoe. I'll go into the results of a desk study that we've been doing in-house in engineering to determine test hole locations, and then I'll discuss some next steps. So firstly, as you probably know, we have a supply shortage in the state line zone. The California Code of Regulations requires that we meet our maximum daily demand on a system-wide basis and on a pressure zone basis with the largest unit out of service, and that's called firm capacity. And currently, we're short of our maximum daily demand in the state line zone by about 1,250 gallons per minute with our baby well offline. And something to keep in mind that I've mentioned before is that we're essentially always operating either at or near our firm capacity in the state line zone because we can't simultaneously run baby well and Tahoe well because of pressure issues. Those are two really large producing units that are right next to each other. And so we're, often operating close to this threshold. We also have low pressure at the South Y area. First, I want to thank Taylor James, our staff engineer, for doing some modeling related to this for this figure here. But what you can see on the left here, this is a model of a 72-hour period of max daily demand, and that's basically distributed over the American Water Works Association's diurnal curves. And all of those nodes, the points there, are basically points in the system where we have modeled pressures. And you can see that if we're looking at maximum pressure, the maximum pressure in that South Y Street area is a lot lower than the rest of the zone. And if you look at minimum pressure right here, you can see the minimum pressure expectedly is also a lot lower. We see pressures in that area modeled as low as around 20 psi, and so that is too low to be acceptable. And so we want to address both this issue with firm capacity in the state line zone and also these low pressure issues. I'm going to be focusing on the state line zone for this presentation because it's more pressing than our other pressure zones. But I wanted to mention that we also do have supply vulnerability in the Myers zone, and when I say Myers, I mean everything that's not state line zone. We do have a firm capacity excess in that zone, but about 60% of the production, as we operate the system there, is from Bakersfield well. And you can see in this plot to the left that over the past few years, arsenic has been creeping up. And the MCL for arsenic is 10 ppb. We've had one exceedance. Currently, we're hovering around 8.5 ppb, and it's been increasing. And so Bakersfield well, which is our main producer there, is threatened by rising arsenic. And even though with Bakersfield down, we can still meet max day demands in that zone. About 45% of the pumping capacity in Myers relies on treatment, wellhead treatment, to be online. And so we have the corrosion control treatment system at South Truckee. We also have the Arrowhead arsenic treatment facilities. And these wellhead treatment facilities, they reduce potential yield, they're energy intensive, they're more of a maintenance challenge to operate. And so, if we did lose Bakersfield, we would be relying on these wells that require treatment, so that's something to keep in mind.
And then also, currently we can operate the system to send water into the state line zone from Myers via Gardner Mountain. And so that means that any redundancy that we lose in Myers could be affecting our redundancy in state line zone as well. So I thought I would mention this Myers issue because it does actually tie into state line. In addition, we have increasing water demand. Our water conservation team has done a really great job to decrease per capita water consumption, and we have decreased it really dramatically. But we do expect to see population growth. Our 2023 demand was around 6,500 acre-feet per year. Our 2045 demand from our urban water management plan is estimated to be about 7,000 acre-feet per year. And then at full build-out, we expect to have a demand of about 11,000 acre-feet per year. And with those increasing demands, we'll see our maximum daily demand go up. And so that makes it even more important to upsize our system to accommodate these new max day demands. And so we have a couple options for augmentation of water supply in state line zones. One that's been discussed is upsizing existing wells. We've talked about doing this at Sunset Well and Helen Well. And this could be a good option in certain sites, but it so happens that these two wells actually have lower than average yield, so it might be better to explore new wells than to look at these wells. Another thing is that deepening wells can have unpredictable impacts to water quality. So one of the things that we saw is we actually drilled an 850-foot test hole at the Helen well site in 2004. And we found that although the yield was pretty good, the deeper down you go, we actually were getting exceedances in arsenic. So that could potentially require treatment, which kind of brings us back to this issue of reduced yield from treatment systems. And then, depending on the complexity of upsizing an existing well, this could be just as expensive as drilling a new well. You're having to go in there, room it out, put in new equipment. If you're upsizing it, you likely need all new electric infrastructure, new pump, all that. And so it ends up being pretty expensive. Another option would be to add wellhead treatment to existing impaired wells. One of the options that we discussed is adding an arsenic treatment system at airport well. However, this well actually has a really low yield. We got it tested in like 2014, and the yield was only 500 gallons per minute. That's expected to decrease when we add treatment because you need the resident time of the water going through the media. And so this, although we have it on our capital and we should leave it there, is a back pocket idea. It's unlikely to fully solve that problem of low pressure in the Y and meeting our max day demand. And then another thing is we want to avoid wellhead treatment whenever possible. Not only does it decrease yield, but it just leads to this tedious maintenance and disposal. You have this media that's now saturated with arsenic that you have to do something with, and it's something that we've tried to do in-house, and it's just kind of a maintenance nightmare. And you're basically operating a small water treatment plant at every wellhead when you do this, and so it just adds a lot of complexity to our operations. And so another option is we can construct new production wells. That's what the bulk of this presentation is going to be on. We can have some issues with unpredictable yield and water quality. We have some limited locations remaining that would be good well sites. And depending on the capacity of the well that we put in, it could require modifications of our distribution system. And then the final option is to augment with surface water, which has the benefit of having a predictable water quality and quantity. We can go sample the water right now, we know what we're going to get. But there's a lengthy water rights process, and typically, unless you can get a filtration exemption, the water treatment is a lot more expensive. So I'm going to kind of zero in here to this idea of constructing new production wells. And I'll talk first briefly about the groundwater development process. It typically has 3 steps, and the first step is a depth study. And what we want to do is basically compile all available information from all the production wells, all the test holes, hydrogeologic maps, geologic maps throughout our service area to basically determine what would be the best areas to drill test holes that would give us the highest likelihood of success. Next, we're actually going to go in and drill test holes where it's exactly what it sounds. Get a drill contractor to come out, put in your hole, put in a temporary casing and pump it. You can do zone tests to see water quality in certain areas, look at yield in certain areas. And then if you find a suitable candidate, then you can move to the third step, which is well construction. And so I conducted a depth study this year to to basically optimize ideal locations for new wells that would optimize water quality, water yield, and the needs of our system. And so I'm going to kind of go over the results of that now. So it's important to have a well in an area of good water quality for two reasons. So number one, we want to be able to meet our MCLs without requiring wellhead treatment. And then number two, we want to avoid corrosive or scaling water, which, as you've seen with South Upper Truckee, can lead to more costs and maintenance with our infrastructure. And so I conducted this water quality analysis to identify the factors that contribute to good water quality. And kind of the goal of this was to look at water quality at all the wells and see if there are similarities between certain wells that would lead us to believe that they're in the same sub-aquifer or pulling water from the same place. And then if we find that there's similar wells that have good water quality, then we can see what attributes of those wells are maybe contributing to that. So that would lead us to say, oh, maybe we should drill in this area and really be zoning on this depth. And so I have really high hopes for this. And I'm not going to explain the statistical method, but you can see that it basically looks like random shotgun scatter on the plot here, and that is not what you want to see. You want to see lots of points that are really close to each other, and that would be interpreted that you have areas of very similar water quality. But what we're seeing is that in all our wells, we pretty much have different water quality. Pretty much every well has a different chemical signature. And so that makes it really hard to optimize the location based on water quality. And so moving on from that, I was like, okay, well, maybe we can optimize for yield. We usually talk about yield with wells in terms of what's called specific capacity. And so the specific capacity of a well is how many gallons per minute you get per foot that you draw the well down. And so typically, if you have a higher specific capacity, you can get a higher yield because you don't have to drill as deep, you don't have to put the pump as deep, and you have more freeboard that's above your static water level and your pump intake that you can draw down from. So you can see a plot here where the size of the dot is proportional to the specific capacity. And one of the things that jumps out really quickly is that specific capacity in our basin it varies by an order of magnitude. And even if you look at down in Tahoe right there, you look at Paloma, which is the southernmost small dot in Tahoe, and then you look at Tahoe well, which is the northernmost, and you can see that we have like a difference in 3 times, and those are like 1,000 feet apart. And so, quarter mile apart. And so even within these really small areas, drawing from very similar depths, we have just totally different yields from our wells. And as you can see in this cross-section here, this shows where the well screens are on the right, relative to the static water level and the level of Lake Tahoe, which is shown in that the dashed line right there. And you can see that we do have our aquifer pretty well characterized in terms of like depth and spatial locations. And so if there was any pattern in yield, we should probably be seeing it, but we're not. And the reason why we have this heterogeneity in water quality and in yield is because we have this really, really complicated underlying geology in our basin, and that is related to how the basin forms. And so it is a glacial outwash, so basically we have water flowing off of glaciers, and that really, the amount of sediment that was transported with that varied depending on the climate at the time. This happened over thousands and thousands of years. And so we ended up with these kind of lenses of clay interbedded with our nice glacial fans that are just random, and they're discontinuous. Other places like the Central Valley, you might have the exact same rock formation, and then you go 20 miles away and it's the exact same. But here you could go like 500 feet away and have it be totally different. And this cross section here that goes from industrial well down by the Y to the south, and then the Tahoe Keys to the north, you can kind of see what we're seeing here. Like none of those gray clay layers are lining up in between those wells, even though some of them are very close to each other. And so that makes it very, very hard to select a potential well site because we are basically going in blind. And so I kind of gave up on trying to optimize for water quality and yield. And so instead sort of transitioned to identifying the best location in the state line zone to meet our needs. And our needs are primarily related to the max data demand and then the pressure issues that we see in the South Y. And so you can think, so this is the state line zone shown in green here. and I'm going to zoom into the area that we really want a well. So ideally, we would have a well to the left of, or the west of the bridge here on the Upper Truckee River, Highway 50. And because we have a pinch point down there that kind of limits how much water we can send over to that side of the zone. However, this is a problematic area for us, and as you'll see in a second. But yeah, so the first thing I wanted to do was I wanted to make sure that a new well in this area would not interfere with existing wells. And so I'm adding a layer to the map right now. And this shows what's called the radius of influence of all the community water system wells. So these are the areas in the bird's eye view at which we'd expect drawdown to be noticeable. And so if you have areas or cones of influence that overlap, you can actually reduce the yield of both wells. And so you kind of want to avoid that when possible. And then next, we want to avoid, obviously, this southwide PCE plume, which is shown to the left. This is a conservative estimate of the modeled movement of the system, basically at its maximum extent. So we don't want to drill any wells in there because we might end up with a PCE impaired well in the future. To be extra safe, I also excluded everything that's down gradient, down hydraulic gradient of the PCE release point, and that would ensure, since water doesn't flow uphill, that we would not end up with a contaminated well. And then coincidentally, that also kind of lies along Lake Tahoe Boulevard, which would protect us from potential impacts from all of these potentially contaminated sites that are shown as asterisks on the map. These sites are not necessarily like known point releases of pollution at the moment, but they include anything that could potentially be. This was by an analysis that Eva did a couple years back. It includes things like gas stations and courtyards and whatnot. And then finally, we have a lot of wetlands in this area, and we have stream environment zones. And we wouldn't want to build in these, number one, from a practical standpoint, you can't really build in the wetland. And then number two, the Sustainable Groundwater Management Act put some restrictions on the impacts that you can have to these groundwater dependent ecosystems. And so if you're drilling a well in these areas that are affected by groundwater, then you have the potential to cause impact to that would put you out of compliance with SGMA. And so you can see that we have just removed a lot of our green area on this map now. And I kind of really see two potential areas here for new well development. And we have the Sierra Tracts area here, and then we have Fair Meadow to the south, Fair Meadow's Plateau Circle. And so I'm just going to zoom in on these really quickly. We have some potentially good parcels for test holes in Sierra Tracts. This Tanglewood property is actually north of Lake Tahoe Boulevard, which wasn't in my ideal area, but we actually own this parcel. We purchased it in 1993 with the intention that we would drill a test hole there, and we never did. And so we own it. Logistically, it's easy. This could be a really good well location, and so I think we should consider drilling a test well there. We also have this former Chris well site. This is one of the wells that we inherited from the Tahoe Sierra Water Company. It was active from 1946 to 2013. It was a shallow well, and it was low yield because it was shallow. However, the specific capacity here was 65 gallons per minute per foot, which is far above average for our system. And I think this could be a potentially really good well location, despite it overlapping with the zone of influence of Helen well. And so also we own the lot, so it could be a good spot for test hole. This was actually taken offline in 2013 because it got a really, really low level MTBE detection, and we have a zero tolerance MTBE policy here. Even though this is way below the MCL. And so, you know, from a legal standpoint, we probably didn't have to take that well offline, but related to the settlement agreement around MTBE, that's probably why we did that. And, but I think that if we went deeper here, then we could potentially avoid risks related to these urban pollutants that you'd expect in this more urban area. And then we have fountains. So this is the site of our fountain shop. There were 2 former wells there. There's not really much information about them. Don't even have well test data for them, but it's a parcel that we own, and it's, you know, far away from these other 2 parcels within this area that would be potentially good. So that could be a good opportunity also. And then moving on to this fair meadow zone here, to orient you, our emergency retention basin is shown there at the top with DRE. This is the confluence of Coal Creek and Trout Creek here. And there are multiple vacant properties in this area. There's a CTC lot that would be a good potential area for a test hole. And then also I wanted to point out that this would be an ideal location for the future Pioneer water line. It's going to be right next to it. So this could potentially add redundancy to our Myers area if we had a high producing well here. And then briefly going to talk about historical test hole success and costs. So on the left here, you can see these are some statistics from all of our test wells that we've drilled from 2000 to present. And you can see that out of 9 test holes that we drilled, only 2 were suitable well sites and actually became well sites without treatment. And so this was Bayview well, which is a great well, and then Elks Club well, which was a pretty low producer. And then we have 1 well, South Upper Truckee well, that ended up being a suitable site, but as I mentioned earlier, it requires wellhead treatment for corrosion control. And then also we deal with these ongoing impacts to our infrastructure because of the corrosive water there. And then the remainder were not suitable for well sites. And so this kind of goes back to what I was saying about the water quality and the yield being really unpredictable here. We don't have much certainty that when we drill test holes, we're going to end up with a good well. Another thing to keep in mind is that drilling test wells is pretty expensive. It's best to do a really comprehensive test hole analysis that includes different zone testing and for both water quality and yield. And this makes it so that you can be extra confident that you're going to continue to meet water quality standards and also have good yield in the future. We don't want to end up drilling a well and then, a couple years down the line, oh, we have arsenic ooze. And so you really want to do a comprehensive test. Let's say we test 4 holes, we're looking at, around $2 million in just cost per test hole. Combine that with the cost of an actual well facility and then backup power, and you're looking at a total project cost of $5 million, which could be a really great well and it could be a not so great well. It wouldn't actually solve our problem. And so, so I begin to find that this is a bit like throwing darts here. There definitely are good well locations to be found, but they're very hard to find, and we don't really have any certainty that we'll find them. And like I said earlier, that's because of this really complex geology. And so with that, I'd welcome any questions.
Mark, on the cost thing, I just caution on the $5 million per well. There's likely to be in the 2 areas you looked at there, especially the Sierra Tract area, some significant pipeline costs that you'd have to add to that. So probably costs a lot more than $5 million for that one. Sounds like the other one with the Pioneer Trail pipeline may not be as high up pipeline costs up there, but
if we put ideally I want to get like a 2,000 GPM well in Sierra Tract. And we would definitely need to upsize our pipelines there. And one of the things we've been talking about is there's the Johnson Meadow restoration project that's planned for 2026. We've been coordinating with the RCD on that one. And it could be possible, we have this abandoned water main, it's an 8-inch main that goes through the meadow there. And we're going to have them pull that out as part of that project because it's deteriorated and exposed. But that might be a good opportunity to double up the water main that's at that pinch point at the bridge to potentially directionally drill, and then you'd have 2 big mains going across that pinch point, and then that could potentially lead to a well in Sierra Tract solving our pressure issues at the Y.
I have a question on I know some of this water supply issue has been going on for a long time, probably at the board level. I'm just trying to get up to speed on trying to justify the urgency and the magnitude of what we're looking at trying to accomplish. And I was just trying to reconcile some of the forecasts, and that you said that came from the water management plan, where it was that slide that was like current 6,000 something, and then the target was like 10,000.
Yeah, so that was at full build out. So that's basically the highest water demand that we'd ever see. And
I'm just curious how we arrived at such an aggressive build like we're losing population, residential, more or less built out, commercial, kind of built out. I don't see where that growth potential is.
Yeah. So basically, I mean, I would say it's a very conservative estimate, but I would say that we arrived at that based on a legitimate method, which was, so we had Kennedy Jenks do a water demand analysis, where what they did is they looked at the per capita water consumption for all different land types or land uses. So they had like industrial versus residential or whatever. And then they looked at all of the potentially developable parcels within our service area. And then they extrapolated that number to all of the other parcels based on the land use zoning. And so then that's how we arrived at that number. But yeah, whether that actually happens or not remains to be seen. But kind of the urgency though is that we are currently not in compliance with the California Water Code because we don't have firm capacity in the state land zone. But it's expected to get worse, not better, especially if we end up taking on keys. So, yeah.
Yeah, I'm just trying to reconcile the build that potential versus all the other factors you're talking about.
Yeah.
Okay.
For sure, yeah.
Nick, as I recall from our water rights workshop, that number was it's kind of a fluffed up number in order to justify a high surface water right application. So it's not necessarily a real projection. It's a upper end of the envelope, so that we don't shoot too low if we do go through with the water right application.
Fair enough.
Right. I mean,
Yeah, no, I get all that. I just wanted to drive, good investment, even just investigating some of this stuff has cost to it. And if we're shooting too high, we're kind of wasting money. So
I don't think we need to go there.
out there. We'll make sure we cover ourselves, but we're not doing a lot of extra.
Yeah. Yeah, and that, one large volunteer truck would not get us up to that. And so kind of the goal with what we're doing right now in the state land zone is trying to get some compliance with the water code in terms of firm capacity, and then give us some cushion in the event that we ended up consolidating the keys.
Yeah, I just trying to recall, Adrian, when is the keys report going to be ready? I can't remember at all.
It's probably at least 3 months out right now.
3 months out. Yeah. Right, just because I feel like kind of just different correlating questions, like that would need to really be considered. I think great analysis and really well done presentation to kind of explain all the stats. I think that was excellent. Yeah, I mean, I think waiting for the keys. In terms of the water intake regarding the exemption, what is the process in terms of getting that exemption? Like, would we get it? Is there a liability that we lose in the future?
It would depend on where the intake location is and what your influent water quality would be. And I believe that the agencies that have filtration exemption, they do UV and ozone, I think. And so there's still there's still some level of treatment, and you still have to chlorinate it and everything. But then, yeah, that's a good point. Like if we see more primary productivity in the lake, and then we end up seeing more algae or something, then having an exemption at one point doesn't necessarily mean you have it forever. But if you do have like a full water treatment plant, you have a lot more flexibility to treat. Because with wellhead, like a wellhead treatment, like I was saying, like it all relies on water going through some sort of media as it's going out of the well. And so you need that contact time. And because we have limited space at the well site, you end up having to decrease the flow rate to get that contact time. But in a full treatment plant, you have much larger filtration beds. And so you can send the water through it a lot slower and get better treatment. And that's something that I think would give us flexibility in the future as we are going to see more MCLs for emerging contaminants. So that we're going to see microplastics, we're going to see PFAS, things like that. And, that's something that at these really, really low levels that we see these contaminants, like parts per trillion, that'd be something that would be really, really hard to treat at a wellhead. Just because in order to get that enough contact time to remove parts per trillion contaminants, you'd have to really reduce your yield. And, so you know, if we did pursue surface water and we could get a filtration exemption, that would decrease the initial capital costs by a lot. But I don't think it would be the end of the world if we didn't get a filtration exemption, because then it would give us a lot more liability for these like new and emerging contaminants that we might have to treat anyway in the future.
I think this is in terms of the next question regarding is it a compliance kind of objective alone? Is there, you know, human health and safety concern? Is there issues with water pressure? You know, so on and so forth. Like, where's the need as it relates to the people? Because ultimately, then that's why you're investing the money, right?
Yeah.
And I appreciate we all have to be regulatory compliant, but you see what I mean?
Yeah. I mean, well, currently we can't meet our max data management statements then. So I would say that that's a risk. And then in terms of the pressure, I guess Adrian can probably speak to that better than me. But we do see pressures in that area that are much lower than ideal. I don't think we see pressures that are like below the regulatory threshold, but it's definitely enough to get like customer complaints and stuff. So yeah, I think you would kind of kill two birds with one, or feed two birds with one stone, I guess.
A couple quick thoughts, you know, in terms of the water supply versus demand. Right now, if we lost our baby well, our big well, we would really be in trouble of, you know, having low pressure in the system. So it is a real concern. And then in terms of the pressure problems, you know, we see like down to close to 20 psi in that south Y zone. And really normal pressure in a water system is 40 psi. So it's definitely a concern and something that we want to look at addressing.
And you have one slide that was like the 4 quadrants with the various options in it.
Yeah.
And I just point out in the lower right-hand corner, the surface water plant would require some fairly significant distribution system modifications too.
Yeah, I'd say outside the 3, other than adding well treatment, the other 3 could require, depending on their location, upsizing the distribution system.
Yeah, and I think when you pointed out earlier that the South Y area is pressure deficient, there's probably some localized improvements that are going to be required regardless of what you do with the wells, correct? I mean, in order to correct that deficiency.
Yeah, I'm not sure if you could make those improvements without increasing supply though. Because the majority of our large producing wells are in the east side of that pressure zone. And we really just need wells that are closer to deal with that. I'm not sure if like doubling up that pipe at that pinch point would solve the problem. If we did it now, it might. But we also just need more water. So.
I guess for me, like, when I see this presentation, which is really done well, thank you. It's more about resiliency and having the ability to deal with well going down or what have you. I guess I don't really have a lot of faith in some of those projections in terms of build out and consumption, but I just think for me it's more of a resiliency thing that we should be considering and possibly finding opportunities to fund something like that. But that's where I'm coming from.
Good. Any other questions?
Just I guess it's like looking at these different pieces, not that it kind of steps far away from this item, but, you know, this was done in preparation of the surface water rights kind of discussion to come with keys. And so is there going to be kind of a melding of all these things at some point, right? Because the interactive tissue is really important. Well, not just that, but like you know what I mean? On some level, we're talking about these things in like kind of siloed fashion, but really they become one thing at some point, right? And so, you know, when does that point come together? Because, you know, looking to, again, not getting too far down the road, you know, the whole team as much as we can, or just delaying moving forward with water rights until we had all that information would be ideal, right? So if we could kick that can down the road a little bit until we had that would be great. I don't know what that reality is, and not to like delay the presentation, you know, that's going to be forthcoming, but just to speak to like wanting to see all those things come together.
I think that's fair direction for staff. I mean, you got to think of us as policymakers and connecting the dots here on some of these different reports and efforts that functionally relate like silos, but, you know, it would help us significantly, I think, going on what Nick's saying. make decisions, bigger decisions on, you know, the issues that Nick laid out. Like, it would help us connect those, and I appreciate connecting like the water management plan and the discussion about capacity with the desk work and the work you put together here, which I agree was good. But just keep that in mind as staff, you know, to help us make informed decisions.
Yeah, and actually one of the things that we were going to propose as part of the presentation at the next board meeting was to have a consultant go through and actually do like kind of more of like a water supply master plan analysis, looking at the costs and benefits of surface water versus groundwater. And so that would kind of be the next step to that, and that would actually be feeding into the CEQA for our water rights application also, because we want to show that we've considered the different impacts. And then, yeah, to the next point too, and to Shane's point about the redundancy, I don't really necessarily see surface water as a substitute, as like a full substitute for all our wells. I think that it's a part of a redundant system that in the event that we lost wells, we could use more of and lose surface water the rest of the time. But I think that it shouldn't really be an either or. Like I think we should still move forward with looking at these potential well sites, and yeah, use surface water to supplement as we can, if we can.
I know I'm going to need to see the results of that master planning analysis. I want to see all four of these alternatives kind of run out, see what sort of costs we're talking about, because it's hard to make a decision, because I suspect that one of these quadrants is an order of magnitude higher than another one of these quadrants. Yeah. In cost. So.
Yeah.
All right.
Thank you.
Thanks, Mark. Okay, let's go on to item 9C, grants and SRF loans update. Danielle.
Well. Slideshow mode.
Yeah.
So this is the question for Mark, I guess. I guess when you're doing your desk audit or your desk analysis, is that all on your own, or are you working with a consultant, or are you checking your work with others? I'm just curious.
I've been doing that on my own. I've been looking at basically all the well completion reports that are in this area, and looking at all publicly available data that we have. And then thankfully Evo laid a lot of the groundwork for that as well. All those like cross-section maps that I showed were from hydrogeologic mapping that Evo did. And then when I'm proposing wells, I'm also checking to make sure that our model sediment thickness there is adequate. So yeah, it's been me. It wouldn't hurt to run it by someone else.
Thank you.
I got to say, I like the approach. I like the analysis that you did. That was good.
Statistics, was it a PCA?
It was very similar to a PCA, but for data that aren't normally distributed.
Small sample size.
No, but each of those dots, though, is all of the water quality data that we have for the wells, which is like lots of years of data.
Mark's work is also his hobby.
I know.
Okay, done.
Well, good afternoon. My name is Danielle Morris. As most of you, I've known some of you before, and I haven't had a chance to meet all of you since I started back in September, the grants coordinator, and I'm here today to give you a very brief grant and SRF loan update. I did not include any fancy graphics in my presentation this time, so please don't judge it against Mark. We're going to go with a just the facts approach.
So,
Oh, yeah, it's our word, right?
yeah, you know what? I might use that graphic in the future. I really liked that one. But today we'll just get into the nitty-gritty of what our program is doing currently and what we're looking at for the future. So I do intend to give you an update every quarter to keep you as well informed as possible with our funding targets and the current projects that we have that are funded through grants and SRF loans. So we'll get started with our grant-funded projects. So currently we have several grants that are open funding projects going on as a district, and those include our Washoe-Nokomaa PRV installation, which was an award from the Bureau of Reclamation. We have a project beginning this summer to install fire hydrants in El Dorado County that was provided by the El Dorado Water Agency through ARPA funds, or the American Rescue Plan Act. We have our groundwater planning project funding through El Dorado Water Agency currently going on. And we have our Tahoe Keys Property Owners Consolidation Assessment also funding through El Dorado Water Agency that's happening. So, and then moving into some slightly larger projects, we are currently working on our Paloma Well and Keller Booster Station backup power generator project that was funded through FEMA's Hazard Mitigation Grant Program. We are working on the design of a fiber optic network that is being led by Chris Skelly and is funded by the California Public Utilities Commission. And then we're also working on our Baldwin Beach sewer line relocation project with an award from the Forest Service. We have several grant-funded partnership projects as well that are currently happening. So starting with, as you can probably see, I'm putting these in order of smallest to greatest. We are currently administering the Tahoe Water for Fire Suppression Partnership funding from fiscal year 23. That is through the Forest Service. We did not actually have an infrastructure project in that partnership for this year, but we administer the program, and so we do receive administration funds to manage that partnership. And then we are currently finishing up the planning project for critical infrastructure hazardous fuels reduction. Well, that's a mouthful. And that is funded through CTC. That is preparing a vegetation management plan that has identified our priority infrastructure sites where we'll be doing fuels reduction work. And then that grant will transition into two additional grants, one of which is the next one on the list here, the Tahoe Water for Fire Suppression Fuels Reduction at Critical Facilities. So that's through the Forest Service. And that particular award will fund fuels reduction projects on Forest Service sites or adjacent to Forest Service sites. And then any other infrastructure sites that are not covered under that grant will be funded through a grant we'll be receiving through the CTC. And we will be submitting a revised formal proposal this year to secure that funding. But I've already been told that the money is there. They're just waiting for us to finish the planning project, and then we can move into requesting that funding for implementation. We are also currently managing two grants that are funding our water conservation program. One of them is focusing on incentives and rebates for leak repairs, and that's through the Department of Water Resources. That is one of our partnership grants, and that we are working with several other partners around the basin, including North Tahoe PUD, Alpine Watershed Group, Tahoe City, El Dorado County. We have 9 different partners on that grant. And then we also have an award from the California Department of Water Resources that is funding our water efficiency and water loss system implementation program. So this is actually a project, an award that is managed by the Mojave Water Agency, and we are a subrecipient through them. So it is paying for us to further develop our water loss reporting and really target those customers with identified leaks, help them with leak repairs, give them additional incentives and rebates, and then really build on that water loss data programming by bringing in new how do I want to describe this? Bringing in new pieces of data that will complement the systems we already have so we can better analyze how water is being used and where we can target reductions further. We have also recently completed several grant-funded projects.
And those include our fire hydrant installation in the city of South Lake Tahoe. That was funded through the city, again, those ARPA funds. We completed our tank backup power supply project, installing battery backups to power our SCADA systems on various water tanks throughout our water system, and that was a FEMA hazard mitigation grant program. We completed the blower system emergency generator project, another hazard mitigation grant program here at the treatment plant. And then last year we finished up one of our waterline projects, Black Bart, Bijou, Bowers waterline, and that was funded through our Tahoe Water for Fire Suppression Partnership fiscal year 22 money from the Forest Service, along with an SRF loan. So when you combine all of those together, we are, the project that we are currently managing is just under $4 million worth of grant funding. And then as you can see here, about $3.5 million worth of projects that were grant funded that were recently completed. So definitely a good amount of funding that has been coming through to the district over the last several years. I have also been working a lot on the public assistance that we received through FEMA for our disaster recovery and response. So we are actually still working to close out and receive reimbursement on disaster response to the Tamarack fire, to the Alpine County flood back in August of 2021, the Caldor fire, and then of course the two most recent disasters are severe winter storms, 2 rounds of severe winter storms in December through December 22 all the way through February of 2023. So I have been working actively with FEMA to get those projects, and Trevor would not be able to do that without the help of Trevor and other engineers in the department getting all that information together. And, you know, we've had a couple of bumps in the road along the way with the public assistance where no fault of our own, we get a different FEMA rep or a different Cal OES rep, and then we kind of have to start all over and provide all the information again, answer all the questions again. So I'm spending a fair bit of time working on that. And then also working with FEMA on a few of the projects from the severe winter storms in February 23 to obtain additional mitigation funding for projects that we decided it wasn't to our benefit to just put back to pre-disaster condition, but to change them to avoid potential hazards in the future. So you guys know what I'm talking about, the Fallen Lake Generator project, and things are looking really good there for the funding that they're going to provide us, and I'm very excited about the what they're potentially going to award us on that project. So we'll just continue to move through those. And then when we get into our SRF loan funded project, I know that you have all heard this before, but in case you are wondering why I'm talking about loans in a grant update, the SRF, the State Revolving Loan Fund through the State Water Resources Control Board, the process for application as well as the process for managing those loans is very similar to that of a grant application and award. So it makes sense to have it fall under the grants department for application and management because we prepare those almost the same way that we would with the grant application. So under our Clean Water State Revolving Loan Fund, which is our sewer project, we are currently managing the Upper Truckee Wastewater Pump Station Rehab Project, the Wastewater Treatment Plant Secondary Clarifier Upgrades, which should be finishing up this summer, the Tahoe Keys Wastewater Pump Station Rehab, which also is going to be finishing up this summer, and then we have a loan pending for the Bijou Wastewater Pump Station Rehab Project. So that's a pretty good chunk of money there, $16 million worth of loans that we're managing right now and another $8 million pending. So keeping us busy. Under the drinking water side, which is going to be all of our water projects, we are currently managing the Keller Heavenly Water System Improvement loan, and then we have submitted applications and have agreements pending for what we're calling waterline upgrades and improvements project, which is our Herbert Walkup and Bijou waterlines, and then also our Pioneer Trail waterline and PRB upgrades. So both of those applications are currently pending, and we hope to see a contract actually on the waterline upgrades and improvements like any day now. So, and then Pioneer, it's going to be a little bit longer on that one, but I'm very excited about the additional funding source that Shelley was successful in securing for us. And then we're going to be looking at some other funding sources that might also be able to offset the cost of that Pioneer Trail Waterline project. So what are those? So some of the applications that we currently are developing or have submitted, we have our climate action and our hazard mitigation plan updates. We are currently working on an application to the California Office of Planning and Research to fund the update of those plans together. Really hoping that we'll be successful in that one because I do see an opportunity here for a lot of collaboration and just a lot of similarities between those two plans and the work that we can get done on those. We have submitted a grant to the Bureau of Reclamation under their drought response program to continue to develop our water loss reporting and transition into looking at implementing water budgets and how we can help our customers meet those water budgets as those regulations continue to come down the line. We have submitted another application to the Bureau of Reclamation under their water and energy efficiency grant to install the last little chunk of water meters that we haven't done, the bulk of which are in that Loop Road project area. And the really nice thing about that is that project area also happens to be considered a disadvantaged community under the economic justice tool for the federal government. So we're hoping that we can score some extra points there and hopefully get funded to put in the last of those meters. And then we are also looking at resubmitting our application for a hazard mitigation grant for the Alpine County Soil Stabilization Project. This was submitted a few years ago and was waitlisted. There is a current hazard mitigation funding round open right now, and we do have the approval from Cal OES to go ahead and resubmit this project. So that's what we're looking at doing right now with that current opportunity. We have some complicating factors with our local hazard mitigation plan that we need to address and update, and that's why we're not looking at developing an application for a new project for this round of funding just yet. And then I also wanted to mention some of the projects that we're targeting for funding. So Pioneer Trail, there are several PRV valves included in that project, and we have had success in the past in securing awards to the Bureau of Reclamation's small-scale water efficiency program for these PRV projects. So we'll be looking at applying for one of those this summer. There's a round that has an application due in July that we're looking at submitting for that. And then we have also submitted the Pioneer Trail water lines to the Tahoe Water for Fire Suppression Partnership, the fiscal year 24 funding, which is fiscal year 24, we don't even know what our funding is just yet. Last year, I think we got the contract on the fiscal year 23 funding, but in November? I think it didn't come till November. So Pioneer Trail is at the top of the list in terms of its priority and ranking in the partnership. So we do hope to secure anywhere from $500,000, maybe $1 million worth of funding through that for the Pioneer Trail project. And then we're looking at this is very preliminary stages, but I do anticipate there will be multiple rounds of hazard mitigation grant program funding opening up. I already know there will be 2 more in addition to what's currently happening based on disasters from atmospheric rivers and other weather events down in Southern California. I know that the next round that's going to open is a very small pot, so again, not sure that we'll be submitting anything in that just yet, but in the future, I'm really interested in pursuing the hazard mitigation grant program funding for the Bellevue pump station improvements after what happened with those severe winter storms last year and the potential for flooding and just how scary it sounds like that got. So I think that is a good one to target for funding, so we're keeping an eye out on that. And then I already mentioned to you earlier the hazardous fuels reduction at critical facilities that are not on Forest Service sites. That will be coming from the CTC. And then we're working on another drinking water SRF loan application for water line upgrades for Lake Tahoe Boulevard, Tahoe Mountain, and Glenwood Rancho. And then we continue to track funding opportunities. We're always looking, always keeping our eye open for what other funding opportunities might be coming along. So just to give you an example of some that we're watching, the State Water Resources Control Board and the Department of Water Resources, you know, we had a lot of success in the past receiving funding through the Integrated Regional Water Management, but DWR has shifted away from that, and they're shifting more towards a watershed approach. So we're kind of monitoring that to see what options might be available to us in the future. Currently, there is no funding for anything, so again, watching for it. And then through the State Water Resources Control Board, they do have some water resilience infrastructure as well as the EPA. Both of those agencies are looking at a lot of funding for water infrastructure that, again, is dealing with mitigating hazards, making our system more resilient to climate change. A lot of focus on climate change and mitigating hazards and damage from disasters right now. So keeping an eye out on those. Sounds like we'll be looking a lot more towards the Department of Interior or other funding sources for groundwater based on Mark's presentation. So I anticipate there's going to be a big need there. Fleet transition, you guys know we're always keeping an eye out for how we can help in that process. Bureau of Reclamation, their Water Smart funding, they have 3 different programs with different options, of which I already mentioned. We've applied for a few and will continue to do so as those come available. Hazard mitigation and BRIC funding, U.S. Department of Energy renewable energy funding, or possibly in the future maybe some battery storage for the solar project that we're looking at. I know we won't, that project, we would not own that project for another at least 7 years, I believe is my understanding, but if there's the potential to get funding in the future to store the power that we're generating off of that, we want to be watching for that. And then also the Cal OES state and local cybersecurity grant program. So California had their cybersecurity plan approved, and now they've applied for funding to implement cybersecurity projects. Once they receive that funding, they'll open up rounds of funding to everyone in the state. They work just like the hazard mitigation grant funding, where it comes from the feds, goes to Cal OES, and then down to the sub-applicants. The last thing I wanted to mention to you guys today was just some efficiency improvements that we are making within the department. So just as I think you all know, the grant specialist position, who is Jennifer Marshall, here with us today, is a new position to the grants department. Previously, it was the grants coordinator and a part-time grant program assistant, and now we have another full-time staff. So really looking at how we can better define the roles and responsibilities of each person in the department to maximize efficiency. We're looking at and talking a lot about collaboration. How can we better collaborate with the various departments in the district that need funding to really align our goals and priorities and work together to plan these things out as far in advance as possible, because that seems to be the number one most important factor when going for funding. Is you need to know well in advance, years in advance, what it is that you want to go for so that you can properly prepare and be as competitive as possible. We're also looking at implementing grant management software that I think will be not only a useful tool for the grants department, but also an excellent communication tool for project managers for each of these grant-funded projects. So I'm very excited about that. And then this one's not as exciting, but very important to me, is the development of procedures within the department. So I like to use the analogy that Andrea says often: if I were to win the lottery tomorrow, someone else would come in and pick up right where I left off and not start from scratch. And so really just documenting a lot of the procedures and policies and processes of the department as we move through these various stages of applying and managing this funding. So with that, does anyone have any questions? Sorry, I know I talked fast, but I was trying to keep it short. I know, it's a lot to cover in a very short amount of time.
I guess also the impact of collaborations, collaborations both internally for opportunities, which I really appreciate. I think one of the things that you mentioned are some opportunities there. I guess the other part too is that we work around bases and collaborate with people, go back to Washington DC to, shake hands and make babies or just finding opportunities in the realm of like those projects that are happening, like CTC is doing something in the Upper Truckee Marsh, or RCD is working on doing a restoration over by the airport. Like, where are there synergies, potential synergies there, or would you make the case that, hey, we're doing restoration, here's some other things that we might want to kind of piggyback onto, and find, or at least help build a better case for grant funding. We are maybe relabel it as restoration, or so I'm sure you're thinking about all those creative ways of doing that, but I think just in general, the better we are at partnering and collaborating, I think the more successful we'll be at bringing in those dollars. So thank you.
Absolutely. I agree.
I just had a quick question about the new management tool you're working at.
Yeah.
Is it something that is kind of an internal management tool for you guys, or does it create capacity benefits as well? Meaning you got to go after additional grants?
I don't know. I don't know the answer to that just yet, Nick. So we haven't implemented it yet. We've been doing a lot of research. We've identified the management software we want to utilize, and we've been doing a lot of research and back and forth with the company on what it can provide, what it can do, and what it cannot do. What the primary focus right now is implementing it as a tool to help us better manage the existing grants that we have, and then, like I said, as a communication tool with our project managers. To me, it's really important that our project managers have access to all the key documents from the grant that is funding their project, so that they are aware of what the requirements are, what they need to do. It's also going to be a way that we can communicate with them, reminders, sort of build. We're hoping to be able to build templates for future grant applications through this. So right now, the focus is going to be on using it to manage the grants that we have, and then to move into, okay, how is this going to better help us develop our applications? And so that remains to be seen how successful it will be, but that is definitely something we're evaluating. I don't know if that gives an answer that we're looking for.
No, I mean, that's what we kind of decided. She just said, kind of the curiosity that exists now with new technological advancements and what those advancements allow in any particular space for you to achieve. And so it's just, I'm pretty ignorant, and more than pretty, in terms of grant, softwares for grants. And so that's what I'm curious. Is it, like, I guess in my mind, like an AI type augmentation tool that's allowing you to kind of advance grants in a quicker fashion? I guess that's like, so just more kind of curious what it actually did.
That is not directly something that we've looked at. I will tell you that in terms of grant software, so there's a lot of software that's designed for agencies that that provide the grants. There's a lot of software designed for nonprofit agencies to manage their grants and to build upon their funder lists and help with their customer relations. What is it? What is the word I'm thinking of? You know this one better than I do. It's CRM? Yes, CRM. Thank you. Customer relationship management. Yeah, so it's been interesting to evaluate the different softwares and try to find the one that might best fit the public agency side. And so the one we're looking at, there just aren't any out there right now. The one we're looking at is supposed to be designed with that in mind. Right now I'm waiting to talk to some people who are actually using it to make sure this is the way we want to go. Yeah.
It does include a subscription to Grant Station too that will hopefully give us access to more opportunities and funding sources that maybe we don't have on our radar already, which is also a $700 value in addition to the management. So that's the one that we're looking at right now.
Quarterly grant reports and sharing with all of them.
I saw that today, yes.
Quarterly release that they have a person dedicated to tracking and logging and providing all these various grant opportunities that are out there, and there's a lot. So I don't know any insider.
I am so offended, Shay. No, that spreadsheet was
very well put together. I mean, that is a comprehensive list. I looked through all the different tabs and all the different sources, and, you know, most of those are on our radar, but there's always going to be some that aren't. So, and also, when I saw the Sierra Camp, I wasn't familiar with what that was, and I immediately thought, partnership on our planning grant application? Could be a possibility there.
Well, that's why I think my question was, we're all living with the resources, so I think the augment capacity and go over more is just something to support about. Credit Day would be one of the first words, and the point out the issues of just human capacity, the problems we're trying to solve. And so looking at it in that terms, I think we can go after it. Because, in fairness to you, I see those Shane sends around, I'm like, oh, that's a lot, man. It's a lot.
It is a lot.
It's a lot.
It begs that creativity. I mean, grant space has just exponentially grown in the last 10 years, All programs are getting slotted, And so I find that in my line of work also, my day job is just being as creative as possible, and like Shane said, partnerships. That's what these funders are actually looking for, is multi-benefit projects, partnerships. And so I just challenge our staff as a whole, like engineering, everyone, to think of things at different lenses, like could it be a resilience project, and not just a water line replacement, just be creative, and try and work those partnerships and be successful.
Well, and that's a really good point, Nick, because, that is the reality with these funding sources is they don't want to pay for our operations and maintenance. They're looking for things that we really have a need for beyond that. And so that's where getting creative in designing these projects that are both serving the needs of the district but also making us eligible for funding is always going to be top of mind.
I did want to add one thing in regards to the capacity, like you were talking about. I'm actually having a meeting with the partisan groups that's based out of DC next week, and they help grant management, grant attainment to see if we can utilize them on an intermittent basis to help our grant department as well. So that would help expand the capacity.
Yeah, I mean, because it's one of the easiest places of all the things we look at, right, where you can justify cost, probably is the easiest, right? And so, to kind of just cost to procure this much return on investment is huge. And so that's why I think the capacity benefits, I think it's one, a lot of upside to Nick's point and really easy to kind of justify and see kind of the cost benefit analysis of, kind of good work you guys are doing. Yeah.
All right. Any other questions? All right.
Thank you. Good work. All right, let's go on to the GM report.
Oh, just a couple of quick comments on Prop 218. So the notices have gone out, so if you haven't received yours yet, you should very soon. The next public evening meeting related to the notice is on April 25th at 6 p.m. So please plan on attending if you're available. And the meeting will be fairly similar to the last one, where we'll first have a capital improvement plan presentation and then the rate study presentation from Sean Korn. And then at the regular scheduled board meeting on May 16th, we'll hold a public hearing to report out the number of rate increase protests received. And then following that, the board will consider adopting the proposed rate increases for fiscal 2025, as well as the water and sewer budgets. And it's just as a reminder, if the district receives protests in an amount that's greater than 50% of the registered property owners, then the rates can't be implemented as proposed, and we would have to go back to the drawing board, revise them, reissue a Prop 218 notice. And just as a reference point, 5 years ago when the district issued its Prop 218 notice, we received protests for approximately 3% of our account holders. That's it.
Are all those dates on the calendar? I'm just wondering. They may not be on my calendar, so I don't know. Melanie, maybe you could send an email out just a reminder. That'd be really helpful.
Right now, in the future meeting, the operations committee meeting, that's going to be changed to Tuesdays going forward. So it's going to be on April 16th instead of the 6th. And those meeting notices should have gone out. Hopefully, Nick, you received it and changed it. Did you get them?
I did. Shannon? Yeah, Shannon did a good job getting all on our calendar.
We're scheduled up next year.
Yeah. Okay. Well, we're gonna go into closed session, just FYI, I just got.
Actually, we do not have any closed sessions today.
Oh, really?
Yep.
Oh, hot dog. Okay. Just FYI, I just got a picture, from my father down in Fiddletown, which is at about elevation 1,500 or so, maybe 2,000. Snow, fresh snow. So I guess that wave of cold snow is coming up the hill.
Ryan, I say.
Right.
Down there. Drive.
Yeah, that's collecting on the ground. So, all right, with that, no other items, we are adjourned. Thank you.
Saturday in April is always a good